What if I told you that every time you say yes when you want to say no, you're lying? What if I told you that every time you give money you don't have, you're stealing from your own future? What if I told you that every time you help someone who should help themselves, you're making them weaker? The person you think you're being kind to, you're actually being cruel to. The person you think you're helping, you're actually hurting. The person you think you're loving, you're actually enabling. Your kindness has become a weapon of mass destruction. And the first casualty is yourself. Today, you're going to learn why the most loving thing you can do is stop being so loving. There's a woman sitting in a coffee shop right now, staring at an empty wallet, wondering how she's going to pay for her child's school lunch tomorrow. 2 hours ago, she handed her last $20 to a co-worker who claimed they needed gas money. This wasn't the first time. This wasn't even the 10th time. This woman has spent her entire life believing that kindness means saying yes to everyone who asks, that being good means never disappointing anyone, that love requires sacrifice until there's nothing left to give. But here's what nobody told her. And here's what nobody's telling you. Your kindness is not a public utility. Your compassion is not a community resource. Your generosity is not a debt you owe to the world simply because you exist. I want to shatter something in your mind today. I want to break apart this dangerous lie that's been planted in your heart since childhood. You've been programmed to believe that good people give until it hurts. That real love means putting everyone else first. That saying no makes you selfish, cruel, heartless. But what if I told you that this programming is destroying your life? What if I told you that your inability to say no is actually the cruelest thing you could do to yourself and to others? That woman in the coffee shop, her name is Rebecca. She's 43 years old, works 2 jobs, and hasn't bought herself new clothes in 3 years. She gives money to relatives who never pay her back, volunteers for every church committee, says yes to every favor, and shows up for everyone except herself. Her family calls her generous. Her friends call her dependable. Her co-workers call her a saint. But Rebecca calls herself tired. Rebecca calls herself broke. Rebecca calls herself invisible to see. Rebecca never learned the difference between kindness and self-destruction. She never understood that true compassion begins with compassion for yourself. She never grasped that you cannot give what you do not have, and you cannot love others well if you refuse to love yourself first. The tragedy of Rebecca's story isn't just her empty wallet. The tragedy is that her kindness has become meaningless. When you say yes to everything, your yes means nothing. When you give to everyone, your giving has no value. When you help without boundaries, your help becomes expected, demanded, taken for granted. Rebecca's kindness stopped being a gift and became an obligation, a service that people now feel entitled to receive. But here's what's even more dangerous. Rebecca's unlimited giving is actually enabling other people's selfishness. Every time she says yes when she should say no, she's teaching someone else that their needs matter more than hers. Every time she gives her last dollar, she's confirming in someone else's mind that she exists to serve them. Every time she sacrifices her well-being for their convenience, she's participating in her own emotional slavery. This is not love. This is not kindness. This is not generosity. This is codependency disguised as compassion. Weakness masquerading as strength. Fear pretending to be love. Real kindness requires wisdom. Real love demands boundaries. Real generosity flows from abundance, not emptiness. I've watched too many people destroy their lives in the name of being good. I've seen marriages crumble because one person gave everything and the other person took everything. I've witnessed businesses fail because owners couldn't say no to unreasonable demands. I've observed parents raise entitled children because they never taught them that kindness is earned, not owed. The most liberating truth you'll ever accept is this: you don't owe anyone your kindness. You don't owe anyone your time. You don't owe anyone your energy. You don't owe anyone your money. You don't owe anyone your peace. You don't owe anyone your presence. You don't owe anyone your yes. Your kindness is a gift, not a right. Your compassion is a choice, not a requirement. Your generosity is a privilege you extend, not a service you provide. When you understand this, everything changes. When you embrace this truth, you stop being a victim of your own good heart and become the master of your own benevolence. But I hear you asking, doesn't this make me selfish? Doesn't this make me hard-hearted? Doesn't this make me cold? No. It makes you wise. It makes you effective. It makes you sustainable. It makes your kindness powerful again when you have boundaries. Your kindness becomes precious. When you have standards, your generosity becomes meaningful. When you have limits, your help becomes valuable. When you choose carefully who receives your gifts, those gifts transform lives instead of enabling dysfunction. The woman in the coffee shop is about to learn this lesson tomorrow. When that same coworker asks for money again, Rebecca is going to say something she's never said before. I can't help you this time. It will feel uncomfortable. It will feel selfish. It will feel wrong. But it will be the first step toward becoming who she was meant to be, toward loving herself enough to protect her resources, toward understanding that her kindness is not a debt she owes to the world. Your kindness belongs to you. Your compassion is your choice. Your generosity is your decision. And when you reclaim ownership of these gifts, you don't become less loving, you become more powerful. You don't become less generous, you become more strategic. You don't become less kind, you become more effective. This is your wake-up call. This is your invitation to freedom. This is your permission to stop being everyone's solution and start being your own priority. Now let me tell you about Marcus. Marcus was a successful businessman who owned 3 restaurants in the city. He had everything going for him, a loving family, financial security, respect in his community. But Marcus had one fatal flaw that would cost him everything. He believed that success meant making everyone happy. He thought that leadership meant saying yes to every request, every demand, every expectation placed upon him. When his employees asked for advances on their salaries, Marcus said yes. When his suppliers demanded extended payment terms, Marcus agreed. When his family members needed loans, Marcus opened his wallet. When community organizations asked for donations, Marcus wrote checks. When friends needed favors, Marcus dropped everything to help. He was known as the most generous man in town, the guy who never let anyone down, a person everyone could count on. But here's what Marcus didn't understand. Every time he said yes when he should have said no, he was building his own prison. Every time he gave when he should have kept, he was forging another link in the chain of obligation that would eventually strangle his dreams. Every time he pleased others at his own expense, he was teaching them that his needs didn't matter, that his boundaries didn't exist, that his life was theirs to consume. Marcus lived in constant anxiety. He couldn't sleep because he was always worried about disappointing someone. He couldn't enjoy his success because he was always thinking about the next person who might need something from him. He couldn't make decisions for his own business because he was too busy solving everyone else's problems. He had become a slave to other people's expectations, a prisoner of his own misguided kindness. The breaking point came when Marcus discovered that his most trusted manager had been stealing from him for 2 years. This was the same manager Marcus had given multiple raises to, the same person he had lent money to for a down payment on a house, the same individual he had treated like family. When Marcus confronted him, the manager looked him in the eye and said, "You're so eager to please everyone, I figured you wouldn't mind." That sentence destroyed Marcus's world. He realized that his kindness had become a weakness that people exploited. His generosity had become an invitation for others to take advantage. His inability to say no had communicated to the world that he was available for abuse. Within 6 months, Marcus lost 2 of his restaurants. His marriage was strained because he had given so much to others that he had nothing left for his wife. His children barely knew him because he was always busy helping other people's children. His health deteriorated because he was so focused on everyone else's needs that he ignored his own body's warnings. But here's what Marcus learned that changed everything. Saying no is not selfish, it's strategic. Boundaries are not walls, they're guidelines. Standards are not limitations, they're investments. When you say no to the wrong things, you create space for the right things. When you refuse to be everything to everyone, you become something powerful to someone. Marcus had to learn that people-pleasing is not kindness, it's cowardice. It's the fear of disappointing others disguised as love. It's the terror of being disliked dressed up as generosity. It's the anxiety of standing alone masquerading as compassion. Real kindness requires courage. Real love demands strength. Real generosity flows from confidence, not insecurity. The most important lesson Marcus learned was this: when you don't respect your own boundaries, you teach others not to respect them either. When you don't value your own time, you signal to others that your time has no value. When you don't protect your own resources, you communicate that your resources are free for the taking. Marcus had to rebuild his life from scratch, but this time he did it with wisdom. He learned to say no with kindness but firmness. He discovered that the people who truly loved him respected his boundaries, while those who complained about his limits were the ones who had been using him all along. He found that his relationships became deeper when they became more selective, that his generosity became more meaningful when it became more intentional. Today, Marcus runs a thriving business again, but with a different philosophy. He helps people, but only those who respect his boundaries. He gives generously, but only when he chooses to give. He serves others, but not at the expense of his own well-being. He learned that the highest form of respect you can show someone is to have enough respect for yourself to say no when no is the right answer. People-pleasing is not love. It's manipulation. It's trying to control how others feel about you by sacrificing who you are. It's trading your authenticity for their approval, your peace for their comfort, your power for their temporary satisfaction. But when you break free from this prison, you don't lose relationships, you gain freedom. You don't lose love, you find respect. You don't lose your kindness, you discover your strength. There's an ancient story about a tree that loved giving. This tree was magnificent, strong, and generous. When children wanted to play, the tree offered its branches for climbing. When they needed shade, the tree spread its leaves wide. When they were hungry, the tree gave its fruit freely. The tree was happy because it could help. But as the years passed, the demands grew larger. The children became adults with bigger needs. They needed wood for their houses, so the tree gave its branches. They needed money, so the tree offered its fruit to sell. They needed bows, so the tree gave its trunk. Finally, they needed a place to rest, so the tree offered what was left of itself, just a small stump. The tree thought it was being kind. The tree believed it was showing love, but the tree was wrong. The tree had confused generosity with self-destruction, kindness with suicide, love with elimination. The tree gave everything and became nothing. The tree helped everyone and helped no one, because a dead tree cannot provide shade, cannot bear fruit, cannot offer shelter. This is the tragedy of unlimited giving. This is the death that comes from kindness without wisdom. This is what happens when you confuse compassion with self-sacrifice, when you mistake love for self-elimination, when you think that helping others means destroy yourself. But here's what the tree never learned. Selective compassion is not selfishness, it's sustainability. Wise giving is not stinginess, it's strategy. Protecting your resources is not greed, it's responsibility. When you preserve yourself, you preserve your ability to help others. When you maintain your strength, you maintain your capacity to serve. When you guard your energy, you guard your power to make a difference. The tree should have learned to say, I can give you some fruit, but I need to keep enough to stay healthy. The tree should have said. I can offer you some branches, but I must keep my roots strong. The tree should have understood that helping others requires keeping yourself whole, that serving others demands preserving yourself, that loving others means loving yourself first. This is the wisdom of selective compassion. Not everyone deserves your energy. Not every request deserves your yes. Not every need deserves your resources. Not every person deserves your help. This doesn't make you cruel, it makes you wise. This doesn't make you heartless, it makes you strategic. This doesn't make you selfish, it makes you sustainable. You must learn to distinguish between those who appreciate your help and those who expect it. You must recognize the difference between those who need your assistance and those who want your convenience. You must understand that some people come to you for empowerment while others come for enablement. The first group wants to grow. The second group wants to stay dependent. Your compassion is not a public resource. Your kindness is not a community service. Your generosity is not a government program. Your help is not a human right. Your time is not public property. Your energy is not a renewable resource. Your love is not an unlimited supply. When you practice selective compassion, you become more effective, not less loving. When you choose carefully who receives your gifts, those gifts become more powerful, not less generous. When you set boundaries around your kindness becomes more meaningful, not less valuable. The tree in the story should have lived forever, providing shade for generations, bearing fruit for centuries, offering shelter for decades. But the tree died young because it never learned the difference between giving and dying, between helping and destroying, between love and elimination. Don't be that tree. Don't give everything and become nothing. Don't help everyone and help no one. Don't love others so much that you forget to love yourself. Learn the wisdom of selective compassion. Master the art of strategic kindness. Understand that the greatest gift you can give the world is a healthy, whole, sustainable you. Let me tell you about Maria. Maria was a single mother who worked as a nurse, struggling to make ends meet while raising two teenagers. for years. She lived like Rebecca, giving her last dollar to anyone who asked. She lived like Marcus, saying yes to every request for help. She lived like the tree, giving until she had nothing left. But Maria's story took a different turn. One evening, after lending money to her sister for the 5th time that month, Maria sat in her car crying. She had just realized she couldn't afford her daughter's school supplies because she had given away her grocery money. That's when something shifted inside her. She made a decision that would change everything. She would only give from overflow, never from emptiness. Maria stopped giving money she didn't have. She stopped saying yes to requests that would hurt her family. She stopped sacrificing her children's needs for other people's wants. At first, people were upset. Her sister called her selfish. Her neighbors said she had changed. Her co-workers whispered that success had gone to her head. But Maria held firm because she understood something profound. Authentic generosity flows from strength, not weakness. Here's what Maria discovered. When you give from emptiness, you're not being generous. You're being desperate. When you help from fear, you're not being kind, you're being manipulative. When you say yes from guilt, you're not being loving, you're being dishonest. Authentic generosity comes from a place of choice, not obligation. It flows from abundance, not scarcity. It springs from joy, not duty. Maria learned to distinguish between helping and enabling. When her sister asked for money the 6th time, Maria said, I love you, but I can't keep giving you money. However, I can help you create a budget and find resources to manage your finances better. Maria was still helping, but she was helping her sister become stronger, not weaker. She was empowering, not enabling. The transformation was remarkable. Within 6 months, Maria had saved enough money to take her children on their first real vacation. Her stress levels dropped because she was no longer constantly worried about other people's problems. Her relationships improved because people began to respect her boundaries. Her children started to respect her more because they saw their mother respecting herself. But here's the most beautiful part of Maria's story. She actually became more generous, not less, because she was giving from strength instead of weakness. Her gifts had more impact because she was helping with wisdom instead of emotion. Her assistance actually transformed lives. Because she was choosing carefully who received her help, her generosity became more meaningful to both the giver and the receiver. And Maria's kindness stopped being an obligation and became an investment. Her generosity stopped being a burden and became a blessing. Her compassion stopped being a weakness and became a strength. She learned that when you give from overflow, you never run dry. When you help from strength, you never burn out. When you love from wholeness, you never become empty. This is the power of authentic generosity. It's not about giving more. It's about giving better. It's not about helping everyone. It's about helping effectively. It's not about being available to all. It's about being valuable to those who matter. It's not about unlimited kindness. It's about strategic compassion. When you give authentically, you give powerfully. When you help selectively, you help meaningfully. When you love strategically, you love effectively. Your generosity becomes a force for transformation instead of a tool for manipulation. Your kindness becomes a catalyst for growth instead of a crutch for dependency. Maria didn't become less caring when she set boundaries. She became more effective. She didn't become less loving when she said no. She became more powerful. She didn't become less generous when she chose carefully. She became more transformational. She learned that authentic generosity is not about giving everything to everyone. It's about giving the right things to the right people at the right time for the right reasons. 3 years ago, I met a woman named Patricia at one of my seminars. She approached me during the break, her eyes filled with tears, her voice trembling with exhaustion. She told me her story, and it was the story of every person who has ever confused kindness with self-destruction, love with obligation, generosity with suicide. Patricia was 52 years old and had spent 30 years of her life being everyone's solution. She was the family member everyone called when they needed money. She was the friend everyone turned to when they needed help. She was the employee everyone relied on when they needed someone to work extra hours. She was the mother everyone expected to solve their problems. She was the neighbor everyone assumed would say yes to any request. But Patricia was dying inside. She had no savings because she had given all her money away. She had no friends because all her relationships were based on what she could do for others. She had no peace because she was constantly worried about disappointing someone. She had no joy because she had forgotten what it felt like to make decisions based on her own needs and desires. Patricia had become a ghost of herself, a shadow of who she was meant to be. She existed only to serve others, to please others, to fix others. She had no identity outside of her usefulness to other people. She had no value outside of her ability to say yes. She had no worth outside of her willingness to sacrifice. The breaking point came when Patricia's own daughter told her, "Mom, I don't even know who you are anymore. You're so busy taking care of everyone else that you've disappeared." That sentence shattered Patricia's heart because she realized it was true. She had given so much of herself away that there was nothing left. She had loved everyone else so completely that she had forgotten how to love herself. That's when Patricia made the most courageous decision of her life. She decided to reclaim her kindness. She decided to take back her generosity. She decided to own her compassion. She decided to stop being everyone's solution and start being her own priority. The first thing Patricia did was create what she called her kindness budget, just like a financial budget. She allocated her time, energy, and resources carefully. She decided how much help she could give without depleting herself. She determined which relationships deserved her investment and which ones were draining her dry. She established clear boundaries around her availability and her assistance. The second thing Patricia did was learn to say no without guilt. She practiced phrases like, "I can't help you with that right now, and that doesn't work for me, and I'm not available for that." At first, it felt foreign, uncomfortable, even cruel. But gradually, she began to feel something she hadn't experienced in years: freedom. The third thing Patricia did was stop explaining herself. She realized that when you're living authentically, you don't need to justify your choices to others when you're operating from wisdom. You don't need to convince anyone that your decisions are right when you're acting from strength. You don't need to apologize for your boundaries. The transformation was not immediate, and it wasn't easy. Some people in Patricia's life were angry. They accused her of being selfish, of changing, of becoming cold. But Patricia understood that the people who complained about her boundaries were the same people who had been violating them. The people who called her selfish were the same people who had been taking advantage of her selflessness. But something beautiful began to happen. As Patricia started respecting herself, others began to respect her too. As she started valuing her own time, others began to value it as well. As she started protecting her own energy, others began to appreciate it more. The relationships that survived her transformation became deeper, more meaningful, more authentic. Patricia began to help people more effectively because she was helping from strength instead of weakness. Her advice became more powerful because it came from wisdom instead of desperation. Her generosity became more meaningful because it came from choice instead of obligation. Her kindness became more transformational because it came from love instead of fear. 6 months after implementing her new approach, Patricia called me with excitement in her voice. She had just taken her first vacation in 15 years. She had started a small business with the money she had saved by not giving it all away. She had joined a hiking group and made friends who loved her for who she was, not for what she could do for them. But the most remarkable change was in Patricia's relationship with herself. She had rediscovered her own dreams, her own interests, her own desires. She had remembered what it felt like to be excited about her own life instead of constantly worried about everyone else's problems. She had reclaimed her identity as a person, not just a resource for others to use today. Patricia is a different woman. She still helps people, but she helps them strategically. She still gives, but she gives from abundance. She still loves, but she loves authentically. She still serves, but she serves with wisdom. She learned that the greatest gift you can give to the world is not unlimited availability, but authentic presence. The greatest service you can provide is not endless sacrifice, but strategic support. Patricia's story is not unique. It's the story of every person who has ever been trapped by their own good heart, enslaved by their own compassion, imprisoned by their own kindness. But it's also the story of liberation, of transformation, of reclaiming your power to choose. You see, kindness is not about saying yes to everyone. Love is not about sacrificing everything. Generosity is not about giving until you have nothing left. Real kindness is strategic. Real love is boundaried. Real generosity is sustainable. You don't owe anyone your kindness. You don't owe anyone your time. You don't owe anyone your energy. You don't owe anyone your resources. You don't owe anyone your peace. You don't owe anyone your peace. You don't owe anyone your joy. You don't owe anyone your life. Your kindness is a gift you choose to give. Your compassion is a privilege you decide to share. Your generosity is a blessing you elect to bestow. When you understand this, you stop being a victim of your own good heart and become the master of your own benevolence. Start today. Create your own kindness budget. Learn to say no without guilt. Stop explaining yourself to people who don't respect your boundaries. Protect your energy like you protect your money. Value your time like you value your life. Love yourself like you love others. Remember, you are not responsible for everyone's happiness, but you are responsible for your own. You are not obligated to solve everyone's problems, but you are obligated to protect your own peace. You are not required to be everyone's solution, but you are required to be your own priority. The world doesn't need your unlimited availability. The world needs your authentic presence. The world doesn't need your endless sacrifice. The world needs your strategic service. The world doesn't need you to give everything. The world needs you to give wisely. Your kindness is not a debt you owe. It's a gift you choose to give. Own it, control it, protect it, use it wisely, and watch how much more powerful your love becomes when you stop giving it away and start investing it strategically.